Use your own two hands. Use your own. Use your own two hands. Yeah. Use your own. Use your own two hands. Use your own. Use your own two hands. With my own two hands. With my own two hands. I'm telling you, this is a ministry. Brother Pastor David is a ministry and just pulls this together, and I just feel so good. I want to sit down, but no. On second thought, I've been told that it's my turn. So preachers don't refuse to preach. My goodness, of course not. I want to open the door a little bit into who I am, though, for just a moment before we jump on who others are. You may have noticed that I stood during the moment when we have silence in memory of a departed one whose death was closest to this day, and that was my father, Robert Edward Davis, who died in 1981 on January 25. My father was a force of nature, church. He was the eldest child of a minister. Reverend P.T. Davis pastored churches in the southeastern part of Oklahoma, Idabel, and he even pastored a church in Sapulpa and brought his family there, including my father, who, when he went to the school to enroll, he looked around and saw this pretty young thing and said, "What grade is she in?" Because that's the grade I want to be in. And he put himself back to be in that grade, and that pretty young thing was my mama. My force of nature daddy, son of a preacher man, was full of responsibility, church, because his father was on the road a lot preaching. He was an itinerant minister going to different little churches and left his eldest to be in charge. That was a time when women were not in charge officially. But we know his mama was telling him what to do, but he was carrying it out, you know. But my father didn't really go the way that you thought he might go, being the son of a preacher man. He had a mind of his own that said, I want to ask questions. And so I grew up with this man telling me to be skeptical. He said to me, "Jerry," because he called me that, he said, "Jerry, don't go for the okie doke." He said, "Ask questions, read, son, be around a lot of people with different views. Don't just go along with the program." So as you could imagine, church wasn't on his list of things to do. He sent us to church, but he just wasn't all into that. I say all that, church, to say, my dad taught me to ask questions about me, myself, and those around me, and especially my country. Because my country said, we're the greatest thing since ice cream. We invented everything good in the world. When you live here, you live in luxury. But I didn't believe that because I didn't see it. And I knew people around me who wished for things that they didn't have. We didn't get brand new textbooks at our school. We got the hand-me-downs, the raggedy ones. The band uniforms were hand-me-downs. They were not crisp, brand new things. And so I grew up in a place that told me to be skeptical. Not only my daddy talking to me, but what I found around me, to be skeptical. Now, another person on my journey told me a long time ago, RCA. RCA. He said, remember those words, RCA. Remember, celebrate, and act. Remember, celebrate, and act. We are getting ready to go into Black History Month. I remember when it was Negro History Day and Negro History Week, and now we got Black History Month, Black Heritage Month. Yes, we got a whole month, even though it's the shortest month of the year. And the coldest, yes, I know, but it's our month. And we're getting ready to go into that month, and we're getting ready to celebrate because we remember. We remember and we celebrate. But church, that's the old man that told me that said, don't forget Act 3. Act 1, remember. Act 2, celebrate. But Act 3 is act. We forget that sometimes because we remember and we celebrate, as we should, because we got a lot to celebrate. My goodness. Remember that song? How I got over, how I sit and wonder, how I got over, how I got over, yeah, how I sit and wonder, how I got over. I won't sing it. My soul sits and wonder how we got over. Now, some people say getting over means exploiting something. Doing something, slyly. No, that's not what the old folks meant when they said over, how I got over. They talk about getting over into that promised land, that righteousness, that place of good. And so how I sit and wonder because you came from somewhere that wasn't so good. And so your soul sits and wonder how I got over. My God Almighty, there is a God that brought me this place. So we remember and we celebrate as we should, but church, Act 3, that's the part that we sometimes let someone else do it. And we don't put ourselves in that place that says it is my responsibility. I told you my daddy knew one thing well, and that was responsibility. Bills paid on time, yard cut. We used to have those little census things that you take home and they ask for the occupation of the. I said, Daddy, what's your occupation? He said, laborer. Laborer, son, I work. Laborer. He started a union at the Frisco Railroad of black workers so that they would not be exploited. He understood that acting, you have to organize. You can't just remember and celebrate, you had to act. And he was proud to work with his hands. As a matter of fact, I would beg him, Daddy, let me cut the yard. He said, son, you can't see. I said, yeah, I can see well enough, son, to cut. No, you cut your foot off. I wanted so badly to be where he was and do what he did. But he said, in due time. He said, son, I want you not to have to learn from experience. Just do everything I tell you. I said, I can't do that, Dad. I was older by then. I can't do it. I have to experience it. He said, I just don't want you to be hurt. I got to go through it, Dad. And I believe that I'm a better person for going through it. But I don't forget what my daddy taught me. He said, be skeptical, church. And I want you to remember something right now as we move into this sermon. I want you to remember, and we're going to celebrate and then we're going to act. But right now, I want to remember something. I asked Reverend Prose to read a biblical passage. Now, this is one of my favorite passages because it's so different. This is about Jesus, but it's the only place in the Bible that this story is told. The rest of the Gospels don't touch this story because it's a hard story to figure out. I like this story, and I want y'all to hear that because I want you to hear this story, and then we're going to deal with it a little bit, and then we're going to apply it. You understand? We're going to move it into where we are. This story takes place in Mark, the 8th chapter, 22nd through the 26th verses.
Right
Reverend
here, right
Prose,
here.
what you read? That's here she is.
Right here. You can stay right there.
All right.
Can you hear me? No, maybe not.
Maybe not. You can
Okay.
step right up.
Maybe I'll stand right here. They came to Bethsaida. Some people brought a blind man to him and begged him to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. And when he had put saliva on his eyes and laid his hands on him, he asked him, "Can you see anything?" And the man looked up and said, "I can see people, but they look like trees walking." Then Jesus laid his hands on his eyes again, and he looked intently, and his sight was restored. And he saw everything clearly. Then he sent him away to his home, saying, "Do not even go into the village."
Thank you, Reverend Prose. Now there's a lot of things in there that Jesus spit. What it just put your hand on it. Jesus, why you got to spit on you? What is that about? And then Jesus said, "Do you see now?" Jesus, you know if he could see. Why you gonna ask him? And then the man said, "No, it didn't take hold. You need to do it again, something. Because I can't see it, And then he said, "Now go to your home, don't go back to the village. Don't tell nobody." What? Is this not a ministry of signs and wonders that Jesus does? Okay. So it's one of those pericopes, we call it if you went to seminary. That little section is called a pericope. You see, we look at that and we say that's hard to preach on. We're going to skip over that. Let's get something else. But let's look at what was going on here. First of all, there is a principle that Jesus was trying to convey to all who were around, and then what Mark was trying to do, who put this thing together. Because Mark was trying to tell this story in other ways. This same story has been repeated before, earlier in Mark. The same kind of thing going on. We talk about people see, but people have eyes, but they do not see. They have ears, but they do not hear. They cannot understand. All of that is going up because Jesus is on his way to Calvary, y'all. And he doesn't have a lot of time, and he wants his disciples to get it, to understand the ministry. This is about for real stuff. I'm going to die. This is not about something that you just say, play with. This is for real. We are challenging the government. We are challenging the status quo. We are pushing people to organize and rise up. Do you understand that this is dangerous? So he's saying these things in many ways to his disciples, and then Mark puts this little pericope in there just to put the cap on it. Let's look at what it is. First of all, there's a principle that says just because you can see something doesn't mean you know everything. You say, what? Just because you can see something doesn't mean you know everything. You see, Jesus asked the blind man, "Can you see anything?" Jesus didn't say, "I know everything. I got to find out. I got to be skeptical and ask. I got to push a little deeper." So he said, "Do you see something?" That's second principle. You might be able to see, but you might not see clearly. There may be some things out there that you say, the government says that equal justice under the law. It's right there on the Supreme Court building. Equal justice under the law. That means everybody. Are you seeing clearly? No, that didn't mean you. Some folks have equal justice. But if you understand that though I can see, I might not see clearly, I want to push a little bit so I can see clearly and understand why it's not that thing right. and push a little bit deeper. And then finally, the last thing, when Jesus said, go to your home, don't even go into the village. He was telling that man to have some patience. You see, we want to run out and tell everybody everything that we know. And sometimes that's not the time to do that. Maybe the time to celebrate and tell everybody is later. Right now is something else. So if we have patience for ourselves, maybe we could put a little patience on others. We could have patience with them if we have patience with ourselves. So those are the things that are pulling me when I read that applies today. Because today, church, we're in a place where a whole lot of people say a lot of things and use the same words, but they don't mean the same words. And sometimes seeing is not as clear as we think it is. And we may not know everything just because someone says we need to make America great again. Okay, we need to make America great again. Just when was America great? And what was going on then? And what's going on right now that we not great? What? And is great the word we really want to use? That's kind of triumphalist. You know, it's kind of like me by myself. I'm great, you're not. That doesn't feel right. So there are some people out there who, like my daddy said, don't fall for the okie doke. And they've been organizing. They've been doing some good things. And one of those people is Reverend Dr. William Barber out of North Carolina. Dr. Barber was in our town recently, and he spoke over at Phillips Theological Seminary and spoke about what he's been doing in North Carolina. He has a book that has come out, published by Beacon Press. And by the way, a little side to this, there are many reasons to be glad you're a Unitarian Universalist. One of the ways that you can say that that's the truth is Beacon Press. That is a Unitarian Universalist publishing house that doesn't restrain itself to just one kind. They are broad. Dr. King published books under Beacon Press. And William Barber has his book out. It's in Beacon Press. So sometimes when people say, what do you Unitarian Universalists do? You just say, well, we publish Dr. King's books. You know, we publish William Barber down in North Carolina, publish his books. And give people that idea that we are doing some things for the broader good. But let me get back to where I'm saying Dr. Barber was saying to us through this book. And by the way, once again, in your winter issue of UU World, which if you're a member, you get it free, a story is there with Dr. Barber. Dr. Barber writes, and it's adapted from the book. And you read that story about Fusion Coalition. Fusion Coalition. Dr. Barber said, look here, y'all. We enter in a third Reconstruction. We know the first Reconstruction in 1865, when the Civil War ended to about 1900. That was the first Reconstruction. You had black people being elected, senators and representatives from the South. You had people being able to stand up and assume that they could buy land and that sort of thing. Well, that ended because folks said no. That's when you have the rise of the Ku Klux Klan and all these vigilante groups that said, we're going to deconstruct Reconstruction. So that was the first Reconstruction. And you had the second Reconstruction that Dr. Barber says was somewhere around Brown v. Board of Education, 1954, that said that you can't have separate but equal. Plessy v. Ferguson said, yes, you could have separate and equal, but Brown v. Board of Education said, no, you can't. You're going to have to integrate. But Supreme Court didn't say when. They said with all deliberate speed. Deliberate speed meant whenever. So, you know, in 1954, even though Brown v. Board came down, everybody was happy, nobody integrated. And in 1955, Emmett Till was lynched. And that kind of said, put a hallmark. We got problems, America. You're not being equal justice under the law here. And that's the second Reconstruction, because you had the Montgomery bus boycott with Rosa Parks and Dr. King. And it moved on into the Civil Rights era, where we had the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 65 Voting Rights Act. And we had good things happening, but we also had a second kind of deconstruction, where you had assassination, Medgar Evers, Dr. King, Malcolm X. You had civil rights workers who were killed, beaten. James Reeb, a Unitarian in Selma, was beaten and killed. You had that horrible response to, yes, we can move together in a place where we should be equally. You had a response that said no. And now Reverend Barber says we're in the third Reconstruction. But he said Jim Crow went to law school. And now he has on a suit, and his name is James Crow, Esquire. And so he said they know if you start killing folks, you're going to go to prison and people are going to be outraged. So they're doing it another way. And he says, look at, Dr. Barber says, look at what they were attacking in the first Reconstruction, the second Reconstruction, and now the third Reconstruction. It's the same things. He names them. Voting rights. Let me say something about voting rights. My son is 18 years old. He has a daddy and a mama who believe strongly in him, but also in how this country can change for the good with people like him actively involved. But we are the kind of parents that we don't say do it because I say do it. We present the evidence and then we say, can you read? My son on his own said, I'm going to register to vote. I said, amen. So I went with him to the election board and we walked in, and there was an African-American woman behind the dais there. May I help you? And my son said, I'd like to register to vote. And she said, that's what I'm talking about. She said, all right, I do this with all young black people coming into this place. Do you know? And she was saying it like this, church. She was saying, do you know people died so you could vote? They got beaten and lynched so you could vote. And my son was saying, oh yes, my father right here tells me often. So it was a beautiful thing. But voting rights, church, is huge. And if we do not vote, we are saying to those people who died, we don't care. Lord have mercy. We can't do that. So you have to vote. But that's what Dr. Barber's saying. The number one thing, strip of voting rights. We try all kind of ways to deny the vote and urge you not to vote. Because, James Crow, Esquire, doesn't just lynch you anymore. He says, oh, you have to have a photo ID. And we don't recognize photo IDs from your college. But if you have a gun, then we'll recognize that photo ID from the gun. So all kinds of little ways to limit voting. Instead of voting on weekends when people are working, laboring through the week. Say now, and weekend became a time they could vote. Now we're going to cut out weekend votes. We're going to cut out early voting. We're going to do everything we can to limit your power. Come on, church. So voting rights, Dr. Barber said, look at it, that's number one. Same thing, the first Reconstruction, second Reconstruction, now same thing, denial of voting rights. Number two, he said, public education. Now, you would think public education should be a right that everyone, all of God's children want to get something better. You want to be educated, but no, because if you're educated, then you start thinking for yourself. You start thinking for yourself, then you start making this thing unhealthy for the powerful elite, those who are running the thing. Public education. So you look at what is going, starve public education to death. Deny teacher raises. Do everything you can to make public education a shadow of what it could be. So you have people like our president who said community colleges should be free to everyone. And everybody got angry with him. Oh, no, you can't do that. No, why not? Public education, we want to educate our public, educate our babies. But that's being denied. Number 3, fair tax structures. Now, fair tax structures, church, I don't want to get up here and be a professor, but I did major in economics in college. And one of the things that we were taught is the sales tax, though everyone pays it, is regressive because poor people who have less money to pay are hit with the same amount as rich people who have a whole lot of money to pay. So what do we have? Oklahoma is the only state, hear me, the only state in this country that relies solely on sales tax for its general revenue. That is ridiculous. Yes. How in the world did that happen? That poor people have to bear the burden like that. And all of the visions or whatever, we're talking sales tax. So that's how we do it. A fair tax structure means the rich will pay their share. That's all we're saying. It ain't gonna hurt them. Donald Trump needs to be broke. That's all we're saying. Pay your share. Pay your share. All right, but Barbara said, I ain't finished there because, these people, they went to college. They went to law school, and now they're really tough, right? The 4th thing that you see that they're attacking, labor rights. Right? I told you my dad organized a union for black employees at his Frisco Railroad. Well, now the unions are just being decimated to the point that there's very few of them. But unions have always stood for worker rights, worker safety, fair pay. But that's how let's have a right to work state, which means no unions. Oh my goodness, but that's the way they attack, all right. Then, of course, if you attack the institutions, the last thing you attack are the people. So let's attack women. Let's attack immigrants. Let's attack minorities and make them the problem. Make them the problem. And that's the game plan. That's what it is. And Barbara says it was the same in 1865, it's the same right now. So we have to get smarter. James Crow, Esquire, got smart, so do we. So no one actually comes out and says, I'm going to destroy you, unless they're really stupid. They come out and say, I'm going to destroy you, but they destroy all the institutions around you so you don't have an opportunity to survive. And I could go on, church, because it's deep in my heart and I can't help it. But I want to move somewhere because I want to celebrate and then I want to act. What Dr. Barber has done is Fusion Coalition. He has pulled together people all over North Carolina. As the director of the NAACP in North Carolina, he said, we need allies. We need allies. We're not just, because our issues are North Carolina issues. All of those things I name are everybody's issue. And he says we all can be together. So he said we need allies. So he went all over North Carolina and pulled people. And he said, one thing I learned is that we got all these groups over here that if you put them together, we outnumber the opposition. But they're not dealing with one another. So he started this thing called Moral Mondays, where people show up on Monday at the State House and they demand action on specific bills, specific legislation. That has spread all over the country to Moral Mondays or Moral Thursdays or Moral Fridays, getting people all involved, getting them past the little things that keep us separated. Right? Remember what Jesus said? Just because you see something doesn't mean you know everything. But the more you hear other folks talking, you get a little bit more clearer. And you check it out by asking. You check it out by saying, are you seeing it now? What does it look like? Because I'm not acting like I know everything. I want you to tell me if it's still hurting or not. That's the kind of relationship building that comes from working together across the lines that separate us. You start building relationships. And church, that brings us to the Industrial Areas Foundation, IAF. Now, when our president was running, remember what they said about him? They said, well, he's a community organizer. That's all he was, a community organizer. Like that's a bad thing. But our president will tell you, if he was standing right here, he learned more in the 4 years he did organizing in Chicago than he did in college or law school in those 4 years in Chicago. He left Columbia, a young man, 24 years old. He headed for Chicago. He said, in Chicago, there's a lot of black people. And I want to work with some black people around issues. And he showed up at an IAF headquarters where he was hired to be an organizer. And he learned how to organize. Our president said, there's nothing wrong with this. People are afraid if you organize. Because if you organize, you are ready to act. And that's the whole thing, church. The elite that stands on the top, they stand there on a very slippery slope. Because all it is, you start revealing the information and you see the scrambling that goes on. Because that's the way God works things, see? That's the way God works things. God said, look here, I got this. I'm with you. You're going through the struggle that you have to go through, but I'm with you. So Barack Obama was an organizer for the IAF, industrial areas. That's the way we used to call cities. It started in 1940. Saul Alinsky was the guy that started it. Saul Alinsky was tough. He was a tough guy. He talked a lot of smack to a lot of people. A lot of people didn't like him. They called him, even his friends said, he's the uncle that you have at Thanksgiving dinner that you wish would go away. He just keeps things going. We trying to be pleasant at the dinner table, and he's still doing it. That was Saul Alinsky. He died in 72. And one thing about it, he burned out his organizers because he was tough. He was ruthless. He said, go after them because they're going after us. You go right back after them. And they got burned out. So in 1972, his replacement, Ed Chambers, said, we're going to take care of our organizers. We cannot burn these folks out. And Barack came under Ed Chambers' leadership. So it was a different kind of leadership under him. And it was much more relationship building relationships. And that's what IAF does. They build relationships. We have started a chapter of IAF in Tulsa. I'm on the board. Amen. Whoa. And on the board, I'm the one that says, come on, let's go do, let's act, and they said, Reverend, that ain't IAF. And I said, okay, can we just name ourselves? They said, well, Reverend, you can call us anything, but that ain't IAF. IAF has a system of doing things, and it's all about relationship building. And sometimes I get anxious because I want to go, I want to move, and they say, not yet. We need to build the relationships. How do you build relationships? You are with somebody, just like any relationship. You stand with them, you talk with them, you eat with them, you talk with them about the issues that are important to them. And they share that. That's how you build relationships. IAF is a consortium of congregations across all faith lines, Jewish, Catholic, Protestant, Baptist, Unitarian, all across these lines. And civic organizations as well, or nonprofits, they can join as well. And they come together and we talk about the issues that are affecting us, me, my family. We talk about these issues, not to the point of saying this is how we're going to solve them, but we get them out. That's how we've been building relationships. We don't have our name yet. We will launch in November the 6th with a name. But IAF says, don't worry about the name. You get the people. You get the congregations. You get the power. And then you'll call yourself something. not too long ago, whereas in the 80s, I've been preaching for 40 years, Pastor, 40 years. And you know, back in the 80s, I was riding the range, right? I was working with Tulsa Metropolitan Ministry, and I met this Reverend Johnny Ray Youngblood out of Brooklyn. Johnny Ray Youngblood was telling me about the organization he had in Brooklyn that built homes, the Nehemiah homes, for poor people. They weren't government projects. They were built from all these congregations that pulled their money together and built these homes. And I was saying, whoa, that was IAF. The IAF organization was doing that. Johnny Ray Youngblood was part of that group that built those homes in East Brooklyn. He did that because they believe truly that God wants us to be this way. God wants us to break outside of the mold that says you're separate from one another. But you can build relationships with my Jewish neighbor, my Catholic neighbor, my Baptist neighbor, amen. You can do something. You can do something with folks who say, I want to come on board. And so the IAF, and I know time is moving. I got so much to say, but time is moving. One of the things I'm going to say this. As African Americans in this country, we have had a lot of people who want us to be part of what they're doing. And that's just natural because our struggle is so emblematic of what needs to do. And people want some black folks to be part of what they're doing. But many times we've been fooled that wasn't really what the whole issue was, that power was not really part of the program, and our words being spoken were not part of the program. The IAF says that in all 65 chapters, all 65, all over the United States, the last group to come in were the black churches. But they came in because they wanted to see. They stepped back and said, let's see what y'all are real about. So Johnny Ray Youngblood is the African-American minister up there in Brooklyn. They built those homes for African-Americans. They came in, but they saw that these folks are for real. They came in, the IAF came in saying 30 congregations at least, $30,000 at least, 30,000 people at least. We want to see you involved. It's not about a community, it's about this institution. Can you do something? So yes, it takes a while, but we usually come in. So November the 6th, we will launch. And in that group of launching, some of the early members that came in includes this church. All Souls came in early. My little church, Restoration and Welcome Table up in Turley, we came in early. Hope Unitarian, they came in early. But we got other congregations too, Catholic, Jewish, we got a bunch of congregations. But this church came in and they said, we're here for the long haul. So what is going on right now is what we call the house meeting campaign. House meetings. Now, church, a house doesn't necessarily mean somebody's domicile, right? Right? That's not it. A house is where the people are. So the meetings are being held up here. And I'm going to give you some directions, and then we're going to get back to this sermon because I'm going to wrap it up here in just a second. You will see in the back of your pews a way for you to sign up for these house meetings. And in these house meetings, you talk about what's affecting your family with other members. Now, part of that, like I said, is not to solve it, but to get the issue out. When we come together in November, we're coming out saying these are the issues we're going to address, including the ones that were brought up here. So I want you to go ahead and look at that. You can talk to 10 people in this congregation have volunteered to lead house meetings, at least a dozen house meetings for the month of February. At least a dozen. And 10 people, and you can see when they're going to happen. Also, there'll be some people who will be down front. After we finish service, they'll be down front to tell you specifically when they can meet with you at these house meetings. It is important, church, for us to use the fusion coalition that Dr. Barber discovered, that all these different justice tribes can come together and do something good. It is important that the IAF has the model. They have the model. Barack Obama learned it, and he said, I'm proud to have been an organizer. He said, I like being an agitator. You know what agitation is? He said, it's challenging people to scrape away the habits. He said, that's what agitation is. Challenging people to scrape away those habits. Be skeptical. Ask questions. To understand that Jesus wants us to see clearly. Jesus doesn't want us to be out there fumbling around. He is asking us, can you see anything? He's asking us that. Can you see anything? He wants us to go back to our homes and organize in the homes and have these house meetings. And then we break out to the village and we tell the people, this is where we're going because God says so. I'm here to tell you, church, that this church is on the line. It's put its foot all the way in IAF. We have a name now called the Tulsa Sponsoring Committee. And every time I hear it, I say, I know we can do better than that. But they say, Reverend, just hold on. Hold on. We're going to come up with a name. But right now, we're the Tulsa Sponsoring Committee. We're going to break out in November. We're going to let everybody know who we are. We're going to come out the house seeing clearly. And we're going to say, are you with me? Yeah. Amen.
You're my brother, you're my sister, so take me by the hand. Come on, together we will work until we're done.
We are your church, and we are proud to be your church, or at least a church that's having a positive impact on your life. I am personally blessed to be your minister, or at least a minister who you're allowing to speak into your life. I hope you'll support our ministry and share your love beyond belief by texting LOVE-BB to 41444 or go to our website. But you can just text LOVE-BB to 41444 and make your gift. It's wonderful. Thank you. Be blessed and be a blessing.